Today, we're going to be going through our webinar today. And if you came to the webinar for navigating the path to regulatory readiness, in which SMUD is going to present their journey within Earth Insights with us, then you're in the right spot here. We'll be walking you through this. My name is Matthew Abbott. I'm the CPO at Earth Solutions. And then Francis, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself here.
Okay, my name is Francis Christensen. I am the gas pipeline operations manager for Sacramento Municipal Utility District.
Great. And it's great to have you, Francis, today. Look forward to hearing the story here. For everyone online here and attending this webinar, just a few things. First off here, you'll see Francis and our contact information. You can take that information. Feel free to reach out and contact us at any point in time. If you have questions about what we're going to discuss today. Second, this is not an open forum, so you will need to ask questions through the Q&A section. It looks like a little comment section up in the Zoom here. And what we will do is we'll address all of the Q&A at the very end of our actual webinar here today. So to get started here, we'll go ahead and jump in. And what I always like to do, for those of you that attend the prior ones, I always like to talk about the problem that we're solving. And I'm going to talk a little bit and then kick it off to Francis about how he's used the solution here. So from a problem standpoint, what we've seen in talking to our customers all around, everywhere here is really around the conditions and consequences, right? You guys have assets in the field, and the conditions and consequences around those assets are constantly changing, especially from an environmental standpoint. Things like methane, slope, fire, seismic activity, what the weather is. Those can, based on those changes, those can actually create risk in your actual assets. And in working with our client base, there was really not a single platform that looked at all those environmental conditions that consolidated them into a single view. And when you don't have that, then it becomes very difficult to prioritize, certain areas of the asset that want to be a main focus or a risky spot, that you really want to focus your team on to get on site and take a look at here. So at Earth Solutions, what we did here is we worked with our clients and we built a solution, and that solution is called Earth Pipeline Integrity Insights, which we'll talk more about. And Francis will talk about how he's used that solution internally here on his side. From a solution standpoint, what did we do here? And the core of what we did here is we built an asset where customers can load in all their asset details. So all of your system segment information that you have can be loaded in. And then what we do is we connect up the application with other data coming from satellite and other sensors here. We pull data in for things like methane, seismic, slope, fire, soil moisture, and weather. So around that asset, you see a single view of all this activity that happens around your asset during different periods of time. Now, not only do we pull the data in and aggregate the data, but we also produce risk scores on those. And so each methane deposit will have a risk score. Each fire will have a risk score, so you can see the severity of what we're detecting with the data that we're getting in. And you can take a look at that across all of your assets again. And then we've got a lot of automation, right? It's good to be able to pull the data in and stop it from being siloed. But the big thing is more about automation. So when you think about the automation aspect, we have things like a rule that automatically geofences alerts to the correct asset. So all that means here is if we have a methane finding that comes in, our system automatically takes a look to say, where is the methane finding? Is it touching or near an asset? If it is, then we relate those two items together here. So that's a big part of the automation we do. And then another part of the automation we do is around the actual notifications or kicking off additional activities. So if there is an area of concern based upon customers' rules that we have, a risk being so high, we can kick off additional notifications and or kick off work orders or throw a webhook out to another system like an SAP or IBM Maximo here, right? And again, that's based on your rules, your thresholds, and of how much risk you have in a particular area. So going from the problem that we have of course, your assets are dispersed, environmental conditions can impact the assets. Now we have the solution where we show all the different environmental conditions around your assets, as they sit in the field here. And this is what the actual solution looks like here. So on the left-hand side, what we do is we obtain the fire, slope, seismic, methane data. That data comes, and the soil moisture comes from satellite providers and partners of ours. With those partners, that data then comes into Earth Solutions inside of our utility application, where it now gets displayed with the assets themselves, right? And if it does touch or is within a threshold of the asset, the threshold you can define, and in Francis's case, I believe it's 300 feet, it will automatically correlate those fire, slope, seismic, methane, soil, and weather activities with the actual asset if it's within 300 feet. Furthermore, because we do have 811 tickets in our system, you can also display those as another variable across the assets as well. So you can see if there's other excavation activities nearby. But the whole point is now, if you have an active fire with a methane deposit with an excavation activity, that's probably a spot you should take a look at immediately. If there's been a slope change with a seismic activity, and now you have a methane deposit, that would also be something you could potentially look at, right? So it's really focusing you on certain aspects of your assets, based upon this different data we have here. And so this is what the actual solution looks like as a whole now. And what we decided to do to our solution, we looked at all different types of ways to get assets and bring assets in. And what we really thought would be the best is if we could give you and give our customers the lowest cost way to aggregate this data with the biggest coverage area, that would be the win. And the reason we chose satellite is for that reason, because what we could do is for a very minimal cost here, we could pull all of that detail in here, all the detail in regarding the methane, fire, seismic, slope activities all in here, but we could do it across your entire pipeline system and segments that you have, really to view and to give you a view of what assets and what areas needed the most, needed to get someone on site to take a look at, to inspect and so on here. So, from the problem, of having the dispersed assets and environmental conditions changing, to the actual solution that we've given of a consolidated view of all those environmental activities across your assets, to providing the biggest coverage here, that is the solution that we've provided here. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to let Francis go in and talk about his actual use of it and the benefit that they've got out of this. So Francis, I'll pass it over to you now here.
Yeah, so first we'll give you a little introduction to SMUD. So we have 76 miles of gas pipeline. It's broken up into 3 segments: 700A, 700B, 800C. That gas pipeline is responsible for the energy for about 50% of SMUD's generating capability at any one time. And of course, we use this standard PIR of 660 foot, which is potential impact radius. So this is our route map, our roughly route map. We start out over in Winters, California, come through largely rural area in Yolo County to southern Sacramento County. And we serve 4 power plants here in the area, with the largest power plant being at the end of the pipeline, and that's Consumnes Power Plant. SMUD, we're very environmentally committed. So we have various initiatives going on, such as Clean Power City. And of course, we're aiming to go zero carbon by 2030. So, monitoring our natural gas pipeline, ensuring that we have no releases, is a huge priority for us. Altogether, we serve about 1.6 million electrical customers, that is generated by way of renewables, wind and solar, hydroelectric, and thermal generation. So we've got a lot going on here. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about, these are our 2 regulatory entities that we answer to, since we're a public entity. So we, PHMSA 49 CFR Part 192, Transportation of Natural Gas and other gas by pipeline. And then recently, within the last 5 years, PHMSA has reached out to state partners to do auditing and other inspections for them, to bolster their manpower. So we also periodically have the CPUC come in and perform inspections of our pipeline and our programs. So speaking from a regulatory point of view, imagine that you have an auditor come into your pipeline for an inspection, and they point to a point on a map and they ask you to tell them about that pipeline at that location and all the interactive risks. So that is a scenario which we recently faced, and facing that scenario, We were able to answer that question, but we had to pull from various different areas to be able to gather that information and answer the question adequately. For instance, we went to EarthNet for USA tickets. We went to our GIS for various data that we have there. We went to our ILI data and internal line inspection data, our construction records, our material verification records. And we had to pull that data all together to be able to provide that answer. We've always been great at gathering data, and we successfully answered the inspection question. But the question came up was, were we really seeing the big picture of what our external threats were and our internal threats were, since we were pulling this information from various different sources? So we were really struggling with how we could see all this information in a meaningful way. We also had external sources of data for our threats, such as USGIS for seismic, NOAA for weather, Watch Duty for fire, our government relations department for, and news and social for social unrest. And then for slope, we really traditionally haven't monitored slope because we're in a relatively flat terrain in the middle of the Sacramento Valley. So utilizing EarthNet began to help us consolidate all this data. So you can go to the next slide. So yeah, again, we are bringing all this data in from multiple locations. Like I said, GIS, our internal line inspections, construction data, as well as our construction records. So using EarthNet, we're able to gather data they're gathering the data for us from weather, fire, slope, seismic, methane, USA tickets. And then we are utilizing our custom data and marrying it up with the data that they're providing. So we are providing our ILI anomalies, our material data, our construction records, our cathodic protection and inspection records. And with the assistance of EarthNet, we're able to distill that down into one interactive threat value. So speaking about that, we're also utilizing a risk model, where we're taking all that data. That's our next initiative. And we're going to be utilizing that data to distill that risk model to distill a risk value that we can also input to the Earth model, risk analysis model, to help us distill that data. Another aspect of regulation that we're looking at is that our Pipes Act in implementation. Another question that we had come up during that recent inspection went into the Pipes Act, and it was, hey, did you study your fugitive emissions? Are you implementing an emissions reduction program? Are you quantifying those emissions reductions? And then, we were looking more into this, and again, we were able to successfully answer those audit questions. But looking more into this, we looked at about May 23rd or so of this year, there was a workshop with PHMSA, and you're looking at that workshop with PHMSA, and what the requirements for the new Pipes Act implementation was going to be. They're like, hey, you know what? You've got to have a suite of leak detection methods. That suite of leak detection methods has to include periodic and continuous means of monitoring. And by the way, hey, you know what? Your advanced leak detection program, it's got to be compliant with future regulations. And we're thinking, how can we be compliant with future regulations? Well, the only way to do that is begin implementing cutting edge technology. So utilizing EarthNet, we are already looking for methane plumes, and going out and evaluating, hey, what's the source of that methane plume? So the next step there is to initiate a conversation with EarthNet. Hey, you know what? Since you guys are already looking at that methane plume, is there a way that we can start quantifying that and looking at it, in greater detail to actually use that as part of our leak survey methods for continuous monitoring? So we're beginning to move into that mode with EarthNet and have those conversations. So since EarthNet can detect methane for risk analysis, and there are multiple entities out there detecting methane, such as, the European Space Agency, various other folks looking at methane via satellite, the potential for leak survey methodology is there. I am aware of at least one private entity here in the United States working to refine their satellite data for continuous leak survey. And again, SMUD, we're beginning that partnership with Earth to develop a proof of concept for us to see how well that works. And that's the end of my part of the presentation, and back to Mr. Matthew.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Francis. That was fantastic. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A right now. And what we'll do is we'll answer the questions. And while we're waiting for some questions to pop in here, just a few things about it. So first, you can see my contact information, Francis's contact information. Definitely feel free to go there and ask any questions that you have, any comments that you have. Second, this webinar is recorded. It's going to be put on our YouTube channel. So you'll see in red there how it says earth.com. That is our YouTube channel. So you can go there. I think it's put on pretty recently, or pretty soon after we do these webinars. That way you can kind of share it out if there's anyone else who wants to see it here. So feel free to ask some questions here, and then and we'll answer some here. And do not be shy. Okay, we have one question that says, how often is the data updated? In terms of from Earth standpoint, I can answer from Earth standpoint, and Francis, I'll let you talk about the ILI and all of the other data. The satellite data that we get, the other information that we get from sensors and weather, it's all near real-time data. So it depends on each one, and I'll explain. Weather is almost real-time at that particular point, right? We get that data almost real-time. Some of the different variables do depend. So with methane, we can do every three days to about every week, where we do methane checks and pull methane data in. When you're looking at like things like slope risk, you're generally not going to do that like every week. There's no reason. So generally once a year for slope risk is about good enough, and it doesn't change that often here. But really, depending upon your process and procedures, we can actually make changes, to those things from that standpoint. Francis, do you want to talk about the ILI data and what you're doing on that side and how often that is updated?
Sure. Our internal line inspection, we perform them about once every 5 years or as needed. So that's fairly static data that we're inputting into a risk model. But there are other things that go into our risk model that we are updating continuously, such as density survey data, various different things, because risk is, it's about probability versus consequence. So there's other portions of the data that we're updating more regularly, and then we'll be providing that data to Earth so that that gets output into the risk analysis module from Earth. One of the things I really wanted to touch on with regard to that risk analysis is that previously the way we're doing risk analysis is that it was really only visible to management and engineering staff what that risk analysis is. Earth, what they're helping us do is they're helping us make that risk value more readily available, not just at this level, but all the way out to the field level, so that our folks in the field could actually pull up EarthNet and look at a risk value for any given segment of the pipeline. So, the question that we had with regard to, tell us about this point of the pipeline and what the risk was. We're aiming to have our field personnel be able to have all that information at their fingertips at one location where they could pull that up on Earth and look at that value and say, okay, this is what my risks are. Here's my interactive threats. here's my internal threats, my, my corrosion, here's my, internal line inspection anomaly. And oh, by the way, I had a USA ticket in proximity to this location. And hey, earlier this year, maybe we had some flooding or high water at that location as well. So it really truly is giving you a near real-time continuous risk analysis for each segment of pipe.
Great. Yeah. Great answer here. And the next question here is um how do notifications work? And then Francis, are you using those at all for anything real time? So let me answer the top part of the notifications piece. So any of the variables that come into our system, into Earth, you can create a notification for based off of your threshold. And I'll use some very simple ones. Methane deposit being over a certain confidence level, like let's say it's over 75, you can have an immediate alert go out to whoever you choose the company via email. We can even do phone calls out. Same thing for like seismic activity, certain seismic over a certain risk threshold. You can have communications go out or notifications go out in real time. Francis, I believe you guys did set up, I think, for fire, right? Real time notifications for fire. And how were you using those, and what was the thought process there?
So for fire, we do get real-time notifications, and we do go out and investigate those, yeah, pretty much immediately. It being a new adopter of Earth, we're still developing how we respond, but there are some things that we respond to immediately, such as fire. The real-time notifications, are very useful and help us dispatch personnel as needed.
Yeah, great. And then next question here is can the so it's more specific to IBM and Oracle and SAP. So can your system integrate to kick off a work order in another system? The answer is yes, and we can do that in multiple ways. So we have APIs in which other systems can hit us to actually pull the data. We also have webhooks, and what you could do is you could have it again based upon notification, like the risk. If a risk is so high on a certain variable, you could have it kick off a webhook to another system, like a work order management system, to get someone on site to check it out. Or you could use us internally to do that as well. Francis, I don't know, are you guys doing that right now at all, like on your side?
So on our side, we haven't integrated it to our SAP system as of yet, but
Okay,
that is something that we'll be exploring as we move forward.
okay, great. And I think that's it. I'm going to give it a second here. Any other Q&A or questions popping up here? Feel free to ask here. I'll give it just another second here. Okay. And I think that's it for the questions here. So again, our contact information is up on the screen here. Please feel free to reach out to myself or to Francis. Again, this will be sent to or uploaded to our YouTube, at earth.com on YouTube here. So feel free to pass it to whoever you would like and share it with whoever you like. Francis, really appreciate it. Great job today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And it's been a great experience. We look forward to moving forward and developing this relationship more.
Yeah, thank you, Francis. And appreciate everyone's time today. Have a great day, and look forward to talking to everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
See you.